Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim's Special Edition. My name is Camel, and today I'll be showing you all of the Easter eggs and notable secrets that I could find within the Dawnguard DLC. I did make a video for Dawnguard's Easter eggs many years ago, since which many more Easter eggs and secrets have been found. So for video quality, subject quantity, and new content reasons, I have remade the Dawnguard Easter egg video, which is this pleasure that you're experiencing right now. Dawnguard, it was the introduction of werewolf and vampire skill trees, the vampire lord ability, new factions, new quests, new items, new characters, new locations, prophecies, and of course some delicious Easter eggs and secrets. The timestamps for which can be found down in the description and in the comments. Now down there in the old description you can also find all of my social media links. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and join our brand new Discord server. Also, be sure to check out my other Easter egg videos via the playlist link down below. You'll really enjoy them. And yes, we will finally answer who the Forgotten King is. But we'll get to that later on, eh? For now though, let's get into Dawnguard. So first up, a classic, a player favorite. Actually my favorite mount in the game. That would be Arvak. So while wandering the cursed realm of Oblivion, known as the Sceolang, a hostile and uninviting realm of grave dust and bone silt, ruled by the esoteric ideal masters, which I have done a full curating Curious Curiosities video for if such things interest you. But back to Arvak. When we enter the Sceolang, a lost soul will run up to us and ask us to help him find his lost horse, Arvak.
You must help me find my Arvak. He doesn't deserve to be in a place like this. Arvak, my horse. We came to this horrible place together. We were attacked by monsters, so I told him to run. Please, he's such a loyal creature, and he's been running for so long. You have to save him. A place like this will change you. Arvak! Arvak! Where are you? Arvak, please come back! Come back!
Now it turns out that Arvak is now very dead and has taken influence from its surroundings, as he is now a black skeletal horse with purple flames waving and licking in place of its mane and tail. Now while there is a whole quest to find its skull and learn how to summon Arvak as a mount for your character, there are a few hidden references in this undead mare. Firstly, Arvak seems to take physical influence from the Nightmare from Dungeons & Dragons, which as you may have guessed is a fiendish horse, sometimes referred to as a hell horse or demon horse. It is not native to the material plane and resides in the plane of shadow, the astral plane, ethereal place, and Hades. Much like Arvak here is native to the Sceolang, a plane of oblivion. And as we can see, it bears a physical resemblance to Arvak, or in this case, Arvak resembles the Nightmare. Secondly, I do believe that Arvak is also a nod to the 1979 novel and 1984 movie, The Never-Ending Story, in which there is a horse called Artax, who belongs to the protagonist, Atreyu. During their travels, Atreyu and Artax enter the Swamp of Sadness, where Artax the horse succumbs to the depressive spell of the mire. He gives in and allows himself to sink and be swallowed by the abyssal maw of the swamp with no resistance. Similar to how Arvak and his owner entered the Sceolang together, a terrible place, where here Arvak was lost, just as Artax was lost to Atreyu. It's okay though, as after this loss, Atreyu went on to form a band. Also, the names Arvak and Artax sound similar. But thirdly, in Norse mythology, the sun goddess Sol rides her chariot across the sky, which is actually the sun. Now Sol's chariot is pulled by two horses. One is Alsvadir and the other is Arvakr. Now Arvakr from Norse mythology has clearly influenced the name of Arvak here in Skyrim, and it wouldn't be the first time we've seen horses in Skyrim take influences from Norse mythology, as the horse Frost's grandfather was Sleipnir, which in Norse mythology was Odin's eight-legged horse. But you can learn more about that in Skyrim's Easter egg video. But when it comes to Arvak, it's really cool knowing these little details, especially because, for me personally, he's my favorite mount in Skyrim. Ah yes, now inside Castle Volkja, we will be met by halls and rooms of vampiric delights, to really drive home the fact that we are amidst the sanguinous bloodthirsters, in case at any point you forgot who your hosts were. However, inside one of the great rooms off from the great feasting hall at the castle's heart, we can find a display case that presents an assortment of items much more vampiric than you may first realize, laid out neatly in an esoterically precise line across the crimson velvet is a golden ring, a hagraven's claw, a daedra's heart, a saber cat's eye, and a dog's ribcage. At first, it may seem like an obscure and random collection of items and ingredients, but this is actually a nod to the 1987 Nintendo Entertainment System game Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest, where in this game the player had to collect Dracula's relics, those being the ring, the nail, the heart, the eyeball, and the rib bone. Now this theme of collecting this specific assortment of items was carried on throughout various later Castlevania titles as well, an idea Bethesda sucked from the neck of Castlevania, as we now have it right here in Skyrim's Dawnguard DLC 2. This next one is more of an interesting tidbit than an Easter egg, but I'm sure, like me, you'll find it interesting. The Dawnguard DLC saw the introduction of the Chaurus Hunter, which at first I didn't believe, as I swear I remember seeing them in the base game, but apparently not. Along with them came their very rare alchemical ingredient, the Chaurus Hunter antennae. But along with them also came 2 unique finishing moves which were added to the game designed specifically just for this type of enemy, involving the wounded insect falling to the ground and the Dragonborn finishing it off with a heavy stomp. There is another one which involves a brutal karate kick right to the snapper of the beast, absolutely crushing and demolishing the insect, an action Bethesda didn't do with the other bugs in the game. Ah yes, now we're going back to the Sceolang, where we will wander through an endless sea of bones, some of which are those of dragons. Well, east of the entrance into this plane of Oblivion, we can find a complete dragon skeleton lying on its stomach, half buried by the timeless marrow soot that washes this landscape. If we get a bit closer, we'll notice that there is a sword jammed through the maw of the fell beast. If we follow its gullet down, we will find a pair of ancient Nordic gauntlets resting in its throat, followed by a skeleton reaching towards the dragon's mouth, presumably swallowed whole. Now this could be a Skyrimized version of Moby Dick, the whale that famously cast galleons fathoms deep to Davy Jones' locker, smashing ships and swallowing seamen by the mouthful. I've met a few people like that. But this here dragon is much like the Moby the Mammoth Easter egg we find in Whiterun. So in this sense, it could be a reference to that Moby Dick. Or, I believe it to be an allusion to the 1996 film Dragonheart, in which the knight Bowen wedges his sword into the roof of the mouth of the dragon known as Draco, when Draco attempted to swallow Knight Bowen. So this would explain the sword, and also the Nordic gauntlets and the skeleton in the stomach are accounted for too, as during this scene, Bowen finds the arm of Sir Eglamour, which is stuck between Draco's teeth after he had, of course, been eaten by the dragon, which I believe leads us to what we see here before us in the Sceolang. And while he is now seeing the dragon's heart, he'll be seeing another end of the dragon soon enough, so let's get out of here. Ah yes, a classic. Inside Fort Dawnguard, we can find 2 huskies. They are named Bran and Sceolang. Firstly, a lot of people believe this dog Bran to be a reference to Brandon Stark from Game of Thrones, as the direwolf is his house's sigil, similar to the husky here, and Bran is also a warg and can put his consciousness into animals. He also has a pet direwolf called Summer that looks fairly similar to Bran here in Skyrim. Brandon Stark would also take control of his direwolf Summer while he dreamt, so we might just have a warged Brandon Stark here in Skyrim. However, we could be barking up the wrong tree, as there is a much stronger and more clear reference here. These two dogs, Bran and Sceolang, are named after two hounds from Irish mythology, the names of which you will not believe are Bran and Sceolang. Now they belonged to a legendary hero and hunter-warrior, Fionn McCool, from again Irish mythology, although he did also appear in the mythologies of Scotland, and that of the Isle of Man as well. But beyond that, his two loyal hounds now reside here in Fort Dawnguard, and into the mythology of the Elder Scrolls. Now following this trend of canines, no, it's not a K10, but another pair of puppies, as inside Castle Volkia we can find two named deathhounds, CuSith and Garmr. And yes, I'm aware I'm probably mispronouncing all of these Celtic and Norse pronunciations, so I do apologize. Anyway, CuSith is named after the mythological hound from Scottish folklore called CuSith. Physically, it is said to reach the sizes of a young bull. Its fur is described as shaggy and dark green in color. Its tail is either coiled up or braided, and its paws are the same width as a man's hand. It is described to be a harbinger of death, which is rather relevant as CuSith here in Skyrim is a death hound. Now its partner, Garmr, is named after Garmr or Garm from Norse mythology, which was described as a wolf with blood-stained fur that guarded the gates of Hell. Now Hell, H-E-L, is the underworld ruled by a goddess of the same name, Hell, which again seems appropriate as Garmr here is a death hound. Also, he resides in Castle Volkia, which has a portal to the Sceolang, which is a plane of Oblivion, which is essentially the equivalent of the underworld in the Elder Scrolls series. So in a sense, Garmr here in Skyrim guards the gates of Hell, just as Garmr does in Norse mythology. Ah yes, now we'll be going back to the Forgotten Vale, as in the highest precipitous peaks of the Falmer encampments that line the jagged valley of the northeasternmost reaches of the Vale, there is an ice-capped crest atop which we can find a snowberry bush marked by what I believe to be a Falmer's attempt at a headstone for a grave. And under the snowberry bush there is a skeleton lying on its back, half buried, and quite literally fully snow-buried, as there is a snowberry bush which appears to have sprouted from this person's stomach, which is curious indeed, or in this case it is in seed. Now one of its arms is raised and outstretched, in the palm of which is a golden sapphire ring, an obscure find stinking of a suspiciously chin-scratching peppering of bizarrery. And sure enough, there are two likely references here. Firstly, this could be a reference to the 2005 Tim Burton movie called Corpse Bride, in which Victor Van Dort is practicing his wedding vows in a forest. While doing so, he slides the ring onto what appears to be the gnarled root of an oak tree, but in reality, it's actually the rotted hand of the movie's namesake for Corpse Bride, Emily, which would explain the tree, the skeleton under the tree, and the golden ring. However, there is another option that I think to be more likely, and that would be the 2006 film known as The Fountain, an obscure movie that is commonly either praised as genius or detested as trash. It's a pretty confusing film that deals with the same characters across different time periods, so I will try and keep it simple for you. So Thomas/Tommy/Tom Creo is married to Izzy/Isabel Creo, who passes away. Thomas plants a seed in her grave, then in a future timeline, Tom Creo flies through space with this tree to find the Fountain of Youth, as one does, as to defeat death and live happily ever after with his wife. In broad strokes, he finds the Fountain of Youth with his wife, which is a tree with a corpse under it at this point. As he goes to put on his wedding ring for some metaphysical or even metaphorical purpose, plants begin to spew from his insides, and he is literally overgrown by fronds, fruits, and flowers. So I suppose, again metaphorically, he lives forever through the recycling system that is Mother Nature. But back to Skyrim. This would explain the berry bush sprouting out of this person's stomach, just as it happened to Tommy. It would also explain the grave marker, as the tree in the film grew from a seed planted in Isabel's grave. It would explain the skeleton under the tree, which I believe to represent Tom, as in his hand he holds the wedding ring, which is represented by this gold and sapphire ring here. And also on top of this all, the snowberry bush could be a play on words, as Isabel was buried in the snow in the film. So make of that what you will, assuming any of it made sense. Or even better if any of it made dollars, because dollars are better than cents. For now, we must venture into the Sceolang once again, a plane of oblivion which few mortals tread. Now in the Sceolang we can find numerous souls wandering aimlessly, helplessly, suffering. There are many lines they mutter in passing, but there are a few of interest. Some may mention events in previous Elder Scrolls games and histories, such as the 1997 game in Elder Scrolls Legend Battlespire.
How dare they cast me from the Battlespire? I will make them pay dearly.
Or being one of Emperor Reman's court wizards.
How could they trick me like this? I was one of Reman's court wizards.
Or fighting for St. Alessia.
I must return to the frontline Alessian headquarters at once. Lives are hanging in the balance.
Or the Oblivion Crisis.
Stay away from the Oblivion Gate, I told them. Did they listen? Of course not.
Or the sacking of the Imperial City.
I wonder if the fire's still burning in the Imperial City.
Or the brush with Death Quest from Oblivion.
Just step into the painting, he said. Yeah, sure. Like it's that simple.
Or just something rather humorous.
All I said to Potema was I thought she looked a little portly in that gown. How was I supposed to know?
Along with these throwbacks, there are also 3 references to out-of-game sources, and I'm not talking about ketchup. Firstly, we can hear this line.
Death is but a door, time is but a window. I'll be back.
This is taken from Vigo the Carpathian, who is the antagonist of the 1989 film Ghostbusters 2, where he drops this very line. And secondly, there are 2 lyrical lines murmured by the Wandering Souls that are taken from the US metal band November's Doom.
I live in a dark world where no light shines through. I carry this burden with every step I take.
Is a lyric taken from the song Dark World Burden, which is the 4th track on their 2005 album The Pale Haunt Departure. And along with this we have, of course,
only those who have suffered long can find the light within the shadows,
which is a lyric from the song The Pale Haunt Departure, which is the first and title track of the very same 2005 album The Pale Haunt Departure. So with that, let's depart the Sceolang. This next one, just a quick little interesting little thing that you'll find interesting, and it's not a reference to anything. The ancient Falmer armor, which we get towards the end of the Dawnguard questline, has a rather interesting editor ID. That being that it's called the Ivory armor in Skyrim's creation kit, suggesting that this armor is actually made from ivory, like that of a mammoth. And if you've seen my curating Curious Curiosities video for the Forgotten Vale, you'll also know that snow elves either rode, hunted, or herded mammoths, as we find a frozen mammoth skeleton with ancient Falmer skeletons in the icy, precipitous heights of the Vale. Following this, we have more interesting secrets hidden in plain sight. Now, the Dawnguard DLC added a piece of armor called the Royal Vampire Armor, found on Lord Harkon on Serana, and one can be found in the Castle Volkia ruins. On this armor is a small silver brooch pinning the drapery to the crown of the right breast. Its motif looks evil and menacing, but it's actually a visage of Molag Bal, the Daedric Prince of Domination, which makes sense, as if you didn't know, Molag Bal created the first vampire, and is therefore naturally the deity of choice for these unnatural beings. Now, on this same royal vampire armor, when worn by a female character, just as Serana does, this will now bear a rather macabre collar. While commonly mistaken for the caricature of a stylized bat face, it is in fact, once again, a visage of their savage master, Molag Bal, who, rather fittingly, is dominating in tight grips even the throats of the female characters. Now on this same armor, when again worn by a female character, there is also a brooch pinning the cape to the upper reaches of the bosom. This same jeweled pin can be found on various other pieces of vampire armor. Interestingly though, this symbol is one from real life, and while it is used to represent modern chaos magic, the earliest use of the symbol that I could find, aka its origin, is actually from author Michael Moorcock, something we've all asked for. Now he uses this symbol to represent the dichotomy of law and chaos in his Eternal Champion series. Since then though, this symbol has been adopted by many facets of modern culture, and is known as the symbol of chaos, the sigil of chaos, the chaos wheel, the arms of chaos, the arrows of chaos, the chaos star, the chaos cross, the symbol of 8, and when in 3 dimensions, the chaosphere. And along with modern witchcraft, it has also been adopted by numerous gaming series to represent chaos or chaos magic, which is rather fitting, as for a mortal's viewpoint within the Elder Scrolls universe, vampires, and particularly the Volkjar clan with the plan of world domination, sure would be perceived as chaotic. So this symbol, being a brooch on their armor, I find rather appropriate. Now this symbol is also used by Chaos in Warhammer, which is where I originally recognized it from. Little did I know that it had a much broader, real-life rooting in our world, which is, rather fittingly, ever so chaotic. Now before we get off the topic of chaos and Molag Bal, there is one more point of interest, which I'm sure you have observed at some point. Inside the Castle Volkjar Cathedral, there is a blood fountain, a shrine, the head of which depicts Molag Bal, once again for the same reason. The vampires worship their creator, the Daedric Prince of Domination, and a few other things, including demonetization, if I dare say what they are. Now the fact that the vampires worship Molag Bal makes this next one all the more confusing, as inside Lord Harkon's chambers there is an array of bits and pieces to check and steal. But on the wall we'll find a banner that might look familiar to you. This is the banner of the Mythic Dawn, the antagonist faction from the main quests of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, which had its allegiance and devotion to the Daedric Prince of Destruction, Mehrunes Dagon, who as far as I can tell has no relation to vampires. So it's an odd faction banner for Lord Harkon, a servant of Molag Bal, to be displaying in his quarters. And if anything, surely vampires would fear the Dawn. Now Dawnguard saw the introduction of a very rare alchemy ingredient called poison bloom. So rare in fact that it made it into the list of Skyrim's 10 rarest alchemy ingredients, video link above. Now the name of this plant may be a nod to a spell of the same name from the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, which was called Poison Bloom. As you probably have pieced together, both Poison Bloom the spell and Poison Bloom the plant both have poisonous aspects and damages, just like social media. Speaking of, be sure to hit up mine down below for your daily dose of pun-administered poison. Now during the Dawnguard main missions, while on the quest Touching the Sky, after penetrating the inner sanctum like a Good Friday night, we'll be facing off against the vampiric ancient Falmer heretic, despiser and spiter of Auriel, Arch-Curate Vurthur. During the battle, Serana will demand he surrenders. He responds with, well, let's take a look.
I won't let you ruin centuries of preparation!
Surrender and give us the bow.
Death first!
This is a reference to the 1987 film The Princess Bride, which was based on the 1973 novel of the same name. In this story, Prince Humperdinck demands Westley surrenders, to which he replies,
Death first!
Just as Arch-Curate Vurthur does here in Dawnguard to Serana, which is mean, Serana's so sweet. Oh yes, now we've got a big one here. In the Soul Cairn, there are 3 Reaper gem fragments that can be collected from various sources and locations throughout this ghastly plane of Oblivion. If you want to know exactly where to find them, I'll direct you once again to my Curating Curious Curiosities video for the Soul Cairn, in which, among a million other things, I'll show you where to find all 3 Reaper gem fragments. Timestamps for each can be found in the description and comment section of that video. Anyway, once we have collected all 3, we can take them to a strange citadel in the southeastern corner of the explorable realm. This is the Reaper's Lair. Once inside, and the Hall of Quietude has been tread, we can place all 3 gem fragments into the pedestal at the center of the Umbral Chamber. This will summon a very strange and uniquely unusual creature, the Reaper, a huge skeletal figure, ghostly in complexion, haunting in its preternatural form. He wields a huge 2-handed axe and wears an executioner's garb, crowned unholily and masked by a midnight hood from which his sickly magenta eyes gleam, clear-focused and cursed. No one really knows what this thing is, as he resides in a plane of Oblivion, the Soul Cairn, which is ruled by the Ideal Masters, who have no connection to the Daedra that we really know of. He's clearly ghostly in appearance and form, skeletal in figure, and resembles no known Daedra, but when killed along with 3 black soul gems, we can also find a Daedra heart, which is something you would expect to find on a Daedra. So again, no one really knows what kind of sick monstrosity this is, likely some kind of twisted creation of the Ideal Masters, who use their esoteric and, quite frankly, to the mortal mind unfathomable necromancy techniques to create this horror, rather than the Reaper being a type of Daedra. So while we're entirely unsure of what the Reaper is within the Elder Scrolls, I am certain in what the Reaper is in reference to outside of the Elder Scrolls. So there are 3 nodes of interest here. Firstly, the Reaper is clearly a loose allusion to the Grim Reaper, both being hooded, deathly figures. The Reaper and the Grim Reaper, well, their names are very similar. The Soul Cairn, where the Reaper lives, is a plane where souls are harvested and collected, just as the Grim Reaper reaps humans and collects their souls. Also, both the Grim Reaper and the Reaper wield huge 2-handed bladed weapons. So there is no doubt to that rough reference there. Secondly, the Reaper spews out glowing green slime during combat. This same slime can be found dripping from the ceiling of his chamber. This has likely taken inspiration from the ectoplasm from the Ghostbusters franchise, ectoplasm being a physical substance emitted from ghosts. In the Ghostbusters franchise, ectoplasm is a sickly glowing green slime, made famous with the character Slimer. And given we already have a Ghostbusters reference in the Soul Cairn, I am certain the Reaper's green slime spew was birthed from Slimer and the glowing green ectoplasm of the Ghostbusters universe. So I'm pretty sure that that ghostly mystery has been busted. And thirdly, we have something rather detailed and obscure, and I'm not talking about my sexuality. What the I forgot I wrote that, that's funny. But rather the Reaper's clear connections to a character from a game called Gauntlet Dark Legacy, which was released between 2000 and 2002 on various platforms. Now in this game there is a boss called the Lich, who looks pretty dang familiar. He is a towering skeletal figure with an executioner's hood over his head, with the very same glowing magenta eyes. He also wields a giant 2-handed battle axe just as the Reaper in Skyrim carries. The Lich also uses abilities and attacks with a sickly green hue to them. Along with this, the Lich also spews maggots at you during the fight, resounding greatly with the combat design of the Reaper, as he too spews green slime onto us during combat. The Lich also is protecting a shard that the hero must collect. This is obviously where the concept of collecting collecting Reaper gem fragments to summon the Reaper came from, as the Reaper gem fragments are quite literally shards. Also, the pose that the Reaper holds when he spews green slime at us mirrors that of the Lich's introduction slide before the boss battle. No doubt, on many levels, making it quite clear that the Reaper here in Skyrim has been heavily modelled off of and is a shining reference to this boss, the Lich, from the rather obscure and underground game Gauntlet Dark Legacy, whose legacy now lives on in the dark here in the Sceolang through the Reaper. Now while we're still here in this bone dust plane of Oblivion, the Sceolang, we can run across a soul pacing around a snuffed fire pit, muttering out loud about an opus and fragmented memories, some of which will sound familiar.
Did I start with my ride on the prison ship, or was it before that? Now, what was it I said to that prisoner? Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming. Yes, that was it.
This is a guy called Jib. Now, if that name sounds like someone you've run across before, there is a good reason for it. As in the Elder Scrolls 3, Jib is the first character we encounter at the start of the game. He's even the NPC we give our name to.
They have taken you from the imperial city's prison, first by carriage and now by boat. To the east, to Morrowind. Fear not, for I am watchful. You have been chosen.
Wake up. We're here. Why are you shaking? Are you okay? Wake up. Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming. What's your name? Well, not even last night's storm could wake you. I heard them say we've reached Morrowind. I'm sure they'll let us go.
Now, while talking with him here in Skyrim, he will explain that he moved to Kvatch in Cyrodiil, where, during the events of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, he died in the Oblivion Crisis, when Kvatch was seized and sieged by the Daedra.
I settled in the city of Kvatch to write my memoirs, and to find some peace and quiet.
Is that where you were attacked?
Indeed. One moment I was writing diligently, and the next my door bursts open. It was a cadre of Dremora. The city was under attack. I took it upon myself to join the cause and fight the Dremora, thinking this would simply be another feather in my cap.
Didn't work out that way, I assume?
The reason I'm standing in front of you as only a whisper of my former self should tell you that.
Interestingly, if we go to Kvatch in the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, as we enter the city, we will see a Dremora exiting from a house. If we enter this very house, we can find the freshly decapitated head of a Dark Elf, no doubt Jib. Check out the Oblivion Easter egg video for more details on that. So that's super cool in and of itself, but there is more. Jib here actually became a saint with the blessings of Vivec. And the reason he was canonized in a religious sense, not a lore sense, was because he eradicated all cliff races from the island of Vvardenfell. If you're unfamiliar with the beast, cliff races are a verminous flying creature that would plague your travels in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, screeching through the sky, swarming down upon you, viciously attacking and spreading their rotten diseases upon the player. Well, Jib here took it upon himself to rid the island of them. For this reason, Saint Jib is a clear allusion to Saint Patrick, who, mythologically, in legend, drove all of the snakes from Ireland. The snakes in this sense being a vermin, just as the cliff races are, and the country of Ireland literally being an island, just as Vvardenfell is. Whether St. Patrick's deeds are true or not, I'm unsure. In fact, I'm certain they aren't. But let's hope, for the sake of everyone, that St. Jib's deeds are true and the winged menace is no more on Vvardenfell. Although, Vvardenfell is also no more, thanks to Red Mountain busting a red-hot nut over Tamriel. Yes, it's not really an Easter egg, but it's worth mentioning purely because it won't take up mushroom. In the Castle Volkja courtyard, we can find various plants and fungi sprouting from the ancient grey stone, as their roots and tendrils take on an antiquarian obsession, merging with the forgotten and bitter oasis that is the Drab Garden. But in a pot behind the rump of a gargoyle statue, we can find a tiny cluster of blisterwort. Items of unusual size always make their way into these videos, and these little fun guys are no exception. They are about 4 to 5 times smaller in scale than a normal blisterwort cluster, and just to help you visualize this, here we can see a regular sprouting of the mushroom with a soul gem for size comparison, and then we have the same soul gem on our petite potted pals here, which paints a clear picture as to just how stunted and dwarfed they are. Ah yes, now this next one is more of a curious secret that most people are unaware of. So, throughout the Elder Scrolls series, there is a saga of books, which tread in the realm of humorous adult fiction. Of course, we speak of the Lusty Argonian Maid, volumes 1 and 2. But did you know, there is a book just like it, called The Sultry Argonian Bard. This was introduced with the Dawnguard DLC, and only one copy can be found. We can find this uniquely scandalous tome in Dead Drop Mine, which is a cave system accessed through a tunnel inside Fort Dawnguard. Here, next to a bedroll on a platform at the upper end of an elevated wooden walkway, someone was having a good old time in here. Now, one of the wikis says another copy can be found within Helga's bunkhouse in Riften once the Dawnguard DLC is installed. I can confirm this to be false. There truly is only one copy, and that's right here in Dead Drop Mine. I suppose we best have a read, shall we? Also take note that the author is also the female character in the book. Act 6, Scene 2, continued. My lady, I could never perform your request. Oh, is it too fast for you? I fear it may damage my instrument. Ah, but you seem to handle your instrument so well, my darling. You flatter me, my lady. Yes, well, it is such a large and magnificent piece. May I hold it? Goodness no. The innkeep would never approve of such a public display. Then may I suggest a private performance, perhaps away from the noise of the inn where we both may enjoy your tremendous talent. Surely you don't mean for me to accompany you to your room. Indeed I do, my sweet. Indeed I do. End of Act 6, Scene 2. And after that, I'm sure we all need to take a cold shower. Nonetheless, you now know about the Sultry Argonian Bard. Now, inside the inner sanctum of the Chantry of Auriel found within the Forgotten Vale, there are many frozen bodies, Falmer, and skeletons littered about the place. But amongst them all we can find these two, a skeleton lying on a tilted tabletop, reaching for a partner who seems to have slid off the table. This is of course a reference to the ending sequence of the 1997 movie Titanic, in which Jack and Rose are floating in deathly cold iceberg-infested waters, while Rose lies on top of some flotsam, keeping out of the abyssal death grips of the frigid black brine, whereas Jack is in the water holding Rose's hand. What a sweet boy. Well, that famous scene has been recreated to some extent here with these two skeletons, who, rather fittingly, are surrounded by monolithic ice formations, just as Jack and Rose were in the ocean. Now in Fort Dawnguard, in the torture room, there is an array of torturously torturous torture tools on a table we'll need a torch to touch our eyes upon. Speaking of torture, that sentence. Now among them is a unique miscellaneous item found nowhere else in the game, simply called Torture Tool, not to be confused with the common miscellaneous item Torture Tools. Now this unique torture tool is inspired by a real-life torture tool called the Knee Splitter, which was used during the Spanish Inquisition. As you may have guessed, the victim's knee was placed between the spikes and the tool was tightened as the victim's willpower loosened. Honestly, give me an arrow to the knee any day. Not strictly an Easter egg, but definitely interesting and easily overlooked and unquestionably unique. Now, Serana in Skyrim seems to be a rough allusion to Selene from the Underworld series. Both are vampiric princesses with a similar name, Serana, Selene, and as far as pasty vampire women go, they actually do look quite similar. They also both perform patricide, which is killing of one's father, although for the lore nerds, Victor was actually Selene's adopted father, which in my eyes is still a father, and along with this, physically, they are both pretty goddamn. When I was a teenager, Selene used to make me sweat, dude. Now, potentially furthering this, in the Underworld series, the vampires and werewolves are eternal enemies. Well, inside a display case in Castle Volkia, there is a unique miscellaneous item. It is called the Werewolf Pelt. It is the only place in the game that this item can be found. Now, of course, just in terms of like physics, to get a werewolf's pelt, you would need to kill it. So someone's been killing werewolves, and given the only place that this werewolf pelt can be found in the game is in the fortress of a vampire lord who is Harkon. Well, again, this harkens back to this being a potential sneaky nod to the Underworld series, as the vampires are displaying a trophy of their enemy's defeat. Now, while we're in this citadel, inside a small section of Volkia Castle called the East Tower, at the top of a set of stairs behind a door, we will find a skeleton that has seemingly been crushed by falling stones as this section of the castle collapsed. But before this entity died, it collected a handful of gems and gold and other valuables. Interestingly though, this skeleton of whatever this creature was has the skeleton of a humanoid, but the head of a deer. Which is weird and all, but lore-wise, I have no idea what this is. It doesn't fit the bill for anything. And while we did see something similar to this in the Solcan's Curating Curious Curiosities video, where we found a humanoid skull with antlers, which we concluded to be the skull of an ancient Bosma, as they once had antlers, this on the other hand is the full head of a deer, so we definitely cannot come to that same conclusion of this being a wood elf, a Bosma. Now, all of this makes me believe that this thing here is probably a reference to the Wendigo, a mythological creature from North American folklore. The Wendigo is described as appearing human, but with the head of a deer. One of its defining attributes is its cannibalistic tendencies to feast upon human flesh. No better place for a creature with such a taste than in the citadel of a vampire clan. Another one of its defining qualities is its insatiable greed and obsession with wealth, which, as we can see, this creature had, as rather than instantly escaping with its life, it first grabbed a bunch of valuable gems and gold, and then because of this insatiable greed was crushed by the falling stones. So quite frankly, it looks like when the roof caved in, brace yourself for this one, this creature did not know when to go. And finally, we land on a great mystery that has perplexed myself and many others and birthed a ream of curious explanations, most of which are not true. I am of course talking about the ancient king in the Forgotten Vale. So, in the highest and deathly cold crags of the Forgotten Vale, there is an ancient temple, the Chantry of Auriel, a holy site to praise the elven god of time, the soul of Anu, Auriel. Off to this side of this religious institution, we will see an ancient Falmer arch, crafted from a stone as pale as their complexion, and mine, quite frankly. It mounts a jagged rock shelf that juts daringly into the lost valley below, lying buried by time, fossilized into the mountain by an eon of ice. Here we can find a skeleton with an elven sword next to it, and most interestingly of all, a crown atop its head. Now, the crown isn't actually an item that we can pick up, but it is instead made of other assets with loose gems sitting atop it, so it looks like a crown for storytelling purposes. Now, let's think about this. Given we're in the Forgotten Vale, an area once ruled by snow elves, this has led to many speculations as to what or who this skeleton might have belonged to, or to whom or what this may be in reference to. and I have a selection of solid theories for you. So firstly, this skeleton is not the famed Snow Prince. While the Snow Prince was a snow elf, and this skeleton here clearly had some regality about them, the Snow Prince lived and died on Solstheim, and in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind's Blood Moon expansion, his remains can be found inside Yolgir Barrow, again which is on Solstheim, and we can also find his armor and his weapon, the Spear of the Snow Prince. So this here skeleton in the Forgotten Vale is not the Snow Prince. But while we're on the topic though, just quickly, I would highly recommend you check out the full Easter egg video I did for the Blood Moon expansion for Morrowind. There is a ton of secret stuff in there. And if you're a fan of the Elder Scrolls series, which I'm going to assume you are if you're watching this, that is a ripper of a video. For now though, back to this skeleton and to the 3 best fitting theories to what this is. Firstly, this may be a reference to the book series Eragon, in which the leader of the Dragon Riders, an elf named Vrail, was killed atop Utgard Mountain. So, quite simply, we have a death at the top of a mountain, both in the book and here. We have a leader, that of the Dragon Riders, as shown with a crown, and an elf as shown with the elven sword. Vrail also died carrying his legendary sword Islingir, which was later renamed to Vragnir, known as the Lightbringer, which this sword here in game could very well be in place of. Skyrim is of course a dragon-filled game, and the area in which we find this skeleton is or was at least ruled by elves. So we have dragons, we have a leader, we have the death, we have a mountaintop, we have an elf, and we have a sword. So it could be that, but there are 2 others. Secondly, this could be a reference to The Hobbit. Most of you probably know it better from the movie, but it was originally a book written by J.R.R. Tolkien and published in 1937. In this story, the Dwarven King, Thorin Oakenshield, wielded an elven sword called Orcrist. He also died at the top of a frost-bitten mountain, with that very elven sword at hand. So, this could very well be a nod to him, his kinghood, his elven sword, and to the place in which he died. Now the third being a reference to the Silmarillion, which was also written by J.R.R. Tolkien and published in 1977. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's set in the same universe as The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Now in this, there were 3 gems called the Silmarils, which were the most prized wonders crafted by the elves. Melkor, later known as Morgoth, was the first Dark Lord. He had an iron crown in which the 3 Silmarils were set. Later, Bran would pry one of the Silmarils free with a blade called Angrist. And while Bran was a man, one of his nicknames or titles was the Elf. So this here find could very well be a reference to Morgoth's Iron Crown, which held the 3 wondrous gems, the Silmarils, which were pried loose by Bran's blade, which could very well be represented by the elven sword we find right here in Skyrim. So there are many facets to this skeleton, but all in all, much like a miner, take your pick. And with that mysterious, arctic, morbid, and regal corpse, we have now delved deep and thoroughly probed all of the Easter eggs and secrets that I could find in the Elder Scrolls Skyrim's Dawnguard DLC. I do hope you have very much enjoyed this curation of interesting and hidden things tucked away into this classic Elder Scrolls content, and that you've learned of something new within the game. Perhaps this has even created a spark to replay it. Whatever this video may have done for you, I hope you enjoyed it. If you know of anyone who would like this kind of content, be sure to share it with them. That would bring me great pleasure. And if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like. And if you have anything to add or know of something I missed, be sure to leave a comment. Links to my other Easter egg videos that I have already done can be found down in the description via the playlist link. Now down there, you may also find all of my social media links. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, along with joining our brand new Discord server. I'd I'd very much enjoy seeing you there. If you would like to support the channel in a more personal way, you can do so on Patreon or join right here on YouTube. As I'm sure you know, all of my time and energy goes into making these videos that I create for you to enjoy, so your support is most genuinely appreciated and welcomed in any and all forms. So thank you very much for watching, thank you for supporting my channel, and I will see you very shortly in the next video. I'll see you there soon.